It's recording?
Okay.
My name is Luca. I'm 20 years old. Well, my parents are Russian. I was born in Israel. I was raised in France, and then I spent my adolescence in Israel again. I've been living in Israel for 7 years. Whenever someone in Israel asks me where I'm from, I always, for years, said France, right? But then I go to France and I'm not really French, you know. And like I'm not French at all, even though I am like in some way, like I did spend my entire childhood there, but it was also in a bubble, so I'm not really French. And you know, my parents are Russian, but when I go to Russia, I'm definitely not Russian, so it's a little bit all over the place. And there is no such thing really as Israeli culture, because Israel is a completely segregated country, like complete segregation. The religious have their own Israel, and they live inside their own Israel, which is not connected to the rest of Israel at all. And then you have the Arab Israelis, Palestinians, who have their own, and then you have a segregation amongst the Arabs between the Palestinians who live in the West Bank and Gaza and the Palestinians that live in Israel. So that's already another form of segregation. And then you have those people that slip through the cracks. And you know, it's another sort of euphemism I'm saying, because there is no word quite to define this. You can call it 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You can say I'm slipping through the cracks, but somebody who manages to find their own world, their own niche as an individual, and making that the fundamental crux of your identity, as opposed to it being defined by your surroundings. On the one hand, I can't not identify as an Israeli because I only have an Israeli passport and I was born here and I did live my entire adolescence here. But at the same time, despite all that, I managed to not be an Israeli. Right? I'm not an Israeli. Like, it doesn't even matter how I identify myself. I don't speak the language. My immersion in the culture was 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Really, I mean, I'm not saying anything is necessarily bad, right? But in a way, looking back, I was lucky for this context, not because I managed to quote unquote not be an Israeli, but rather because I managed to remain a cosmopolitan and like cement this cosmopolitan identity. All of Israeli identity and culture is in fact 1 foot in and 1 foot out, because it really depends on where you live, what school you went to, this, that.
Would you say that's Israeli about you?
Maybe it is. Yes, maybe that is. You're right. That is funny. That's true. Perhaps that is the nature of my Israeli identity. It is in fact in the fact itself that I was able to not integrate so much. It does make me Israeli, in a way. I mean, it's like very convoluted, and like because it could also be about anything. Because there's also the same case which happens in necessarily other countries. But because I happen to be in Israel, it's like by circumstance, right? By chance. It just so happened that in my case, the fact that I'm 1 foot in, 1 foot out happens to make me Israeli. So yeah.
And you're an artist.
Yes, I am.
To what extent are you an artist? What defines your art?
To a fullest extent. I mean, I was meaning in the days leading up to this interview to talk about something which I discussed with my friend Sam a few days ago, which is namely that Heidegger essay where he talks about what in Hebrew is called techne, which is roughly translated as a technique. And anything with the technique and anything with an approach and a certain mentality and a certain perspective can be art, even if it's mathematics or if it's philosophy or if it's anything at all. What defines my art is just that, you know, it's just completely pure, you know, it's everything in my life is dependent on this, and it's just something, it's not something I do because I want to, it's something that I do because I need to do it. I make hip hop. I've experimented with house. I've experimented with house, even techno. I've experimented with different. I would love to work with jazz. I would love to work and collaborate with artists who make jazz, and because I have songs and ideas and motifs and for what I want to create in my mind, and I would like to put them down into reality. And just like words, when you speak them, they manifest themselves into reality. The same thing with music. It's just an action manifesting something that's an idea and something that's real. And the music that I want to make and the music that I do make is always playing with this idea of between a fantasy and reality. Because also, if you don't have any audience, your music remains a fantasy even though it's out there. And then if you do have an audience, it changes everything. So as it pertains to expression in music, there's two things you can separate it to in my case, because I make beats and I also write lyrics. So I'm a rapper and a beat maker. Even though that's not the whole of my identity, but that is what I at least will be starting my creative journey with. So when it comes to music, a lot of that, when the actual beat making, a lot of that is very intuitive, right? It works by finding the right sounds that you like, and a lot of the time the sounds that are, not always, but a lot of the time the sounds that I'm drawn to are more abrasive. They something that can incorporate in it the angst of a young person, and that angst is something that I want to project and make real. If you're talking about this definition between reality and fantasy, make real through music this angst, as a lot of young people do like to do. I'm repeating myself. As it pertains to the lyrics, that's where it gets a little bit more interesting, because that's less intuitive. That's always, you have something that you want to say and then you end up writing something, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And you know, there's also lyrics that I write that pertain to this angst, but also you can work with the duality of what you want to say in your music.
I wake up on the wrong side of my bed every day, every day, every day I'm dead. And all I see is a sky that is red, and these bitches be bitches not hustling for bread. I wake up on the wrong side of my bed every day, every day, every day I'm dead. And all I see is the sky that is red, and these bitches be bitches not hustling for bread.
And try and incorporate different messages and different ideas and motifs of writing, also from ones that other artists have used, and remake them, and you know, also have a very unique writing style. And I guess that writing has always been the thing that's closest to me, because the thing that I first started creating was like, I started writing poetry before. That was my first thing I started creating when I was even a little kid, that came before anything else. So I think this definition, you know, when you're talking about how do you make something that's a fantasy and something that's a reality, it's primarily by finding how you can write in your own unique way, and then seeing if that way of writing resonates with other people. I think that nowadays, especially after the 20th century, you don't have to make music that has a message, but that's typically seen as being more of the role of music as opposed to the role of fine arts. In the fine arts, that's not even seen as a prerequisite, whereas with music, it kind of is, and you still have this debate and critique of, for example, young, you know, they're called, you know, young rappers, people who do stuff like mumble rap or just rap without any meaning, that I actually happen to like. But it's, you know, there's still this debate, there's still people who get sort of who criticize it, and I don't criticize it, but at the same time, the stuff that I'm trying to do is not necessarily of that ilk. I'm actually trying to make something that's has more of a specific message to it, you know? Yeah. I make music at the moment as a healing process, and the main subject of my music is my mental health. And a whole generation of people who are being manipulated or used in the context of mental health, who don't really know or have any avenues for how to express that. And if you look at one of the main guys that began this sort of thing, and I don't make music that's exactly like his, and I don't necessarily try to imitate him in any way, but at the same time he did inspire me hugely, that is Kid Cudi, because he made this type of music that focused on mental health and problems that are internal, and kids, that everybody, as they're going through their adolescence, can relate to this. And it helped out a whole generation of kids. And ultimately, I would like to be in a position to make something that would make, even if it's not the whole world, but just, you know, some kid somewhere say, yeah, I relate to this, I understand where this is coming from. You know, there's something about liberty and justice, that ancient, you know, pillar that a lot of civilization is based on, this struggle between people who are trying to strip people of it and people who are trying to reclaim it. And that is something that I'm trying to do in my music, even though, to be humble about it, I'm not always the best yet at doing that. And I hope to develop my craft and become somebody who can do it justice, can do this battle justice. As it pertains to your question about the Israelism of my art, I would say that it's actually more of in a reactionary position, because I am very much anti-Israel, and I'm anti the oppression that Israel places on its citizens, especially those that are Palestinian, and obviously also not its citizens who are citizenless, who are, I don't know how you call it, without citizenship, who are the Palestinian people. And I would definitely like in my music in the future to comment on the Palestinian struggle. It's something that's very dear to me. Of course, I, like Martha, who's sitting across me, who went to an Arab school, essentially. And, you know, we've been around this situation for our entire adolescence. So that is the Israelism of my art, you know, as a reaction of what Israel is doing. It's nothing particularly Israeli or Tel Avivian or this or that, in terms of what my music sounds like or the message that I am sending, but it is something in terms of I can't ignore that this is such a contentious issue that's so close to my heart. I can't ignore and then not speak about it ever in my career. I definitely will speak about it. I'm Luca. I'm a fucking lover boy. I'm a fucking prince. I say, who are you, and do you want to share the love? Sounds like hippie shit, I know, but like legit, that's literally the best way to summarize, if you will, who I am, because that's the only steady thing that it will always remain.